So yeah, basically this session, I'm just going to sort of go over some of the research tools out there, because obviously in your bids, you have to be able to, basically there's going to be evidence of need question, however it's phrased, which is kind of like, well, what is the need for the project? So you can, there's two basic type of things. So obviously quantitative, people have got an idea what quantitative means.
To do with figures.
Yeah, I tend to use two types, either the quantitative or the qualitative, but quantitative tends to be more numbers based, and qualitative are all the soft items. Would I be right?
Basically, quantitative. Yeah, I mean, quantitative is kind of like your hard data, so it's normally like numerical.
Yeah,
it's factual. It's something that's sort of, you know, can be derived from statistics. It's good because it's good for comparison. So if you wanted to say, you know, show the unemployment in different areas, and you come up with an unemployment figure, that gives you an idea of how you rank out in terms of, like, you know, for example, how does Hounslow rank compared to other areas? Because like I said, bear in mind, you're effectively like competing with other bids. So it's good to have that element of objective data. So qualitative, it's more kind of sometimes described as soft, sensitive, nuanced. It provides more insight and depth. So a classic example would be like a case study. So you're getting more perspective from people. Seeks to describe. So it's good to have a mixture of both the qualitative and the quantitative in your research, in your applications. So yeah, some of the benefits of statistics viewed as reliable and factual. So a lot of statistics come from government departments. So Department of Work and Pensions, Education. Obviously, it's quite timely with the census. Census is going to be, for some strange reason, the government is going ahead with it on March 21st, whereas Scotland and Northern Ireland are actually delaying it. In England, they've decided to go ahead with it. The census is every 10 years. That's compiled by the Office of National Statistics. And obviously that is the most comprehensive source of information, you know, goes through information about every household in the country. So yeah, demographic information. Because it's only every 10 years, it does mean that obviously it gets a bit out of date after a few years. So it will be good. Well, don't know when the census information will be published, but obviously it means for the next few years, you will have very good census data.
Yeah, we had the presentation from the guy from London Borough of Hounslow, who talked us through the census and so on, and he said the data will start trickling out within 2 years, but the big stuff won't be available until about 3 or 4 years later, because of the sheer volume of data. But he did say, you know, it should be quicker now because they're expecting us to, if we can, complete it online. But let's see what happens when I get the notification.
Which kind of, so there is a bit of an issue with official statistics. Sometimes there is a bit of a lag between when they're compiled and when they come through. And obviously, when you're bid, you're trying to make the case for the need that's not immediate. So some figures, sort of like, say, crime figures, are updated quite regularly. But yeah, some figures, there is a bit of a lag. And obviously, like you're saying with the census, it's but I mean, you've just got to make the best of what you can find, really. Yeah, like I said, so things like analysis and comparison with figures you can compare. For example, London boroughs against each other. Where does Hounslow rank compared to the other 32 London boroughs? You can convey information succinctly, so you've always got to bear in mind you've got your word limits in your application form, so you need to be succinct. Defining things, so the scale of issues, trends, like are things getting worse or better? Is it problems going to grow or decrease? Yeah, so statistics. Set out the need, help you set out the need, demonstrate that support. Yeah, how big is the problem? Like I said, trends, are things getting better or worse? Yeah, comparison with national, regional, local. Obviously, being in London, you can compare yourself to other London boroughs. Specifically, say if you're applying for Trust for London, it's a pan London borough, so you're comparing yourself to other London boroughs who also have projects competing for the same funding. Yeah, so we can't really, not much time to do the activities, but I'll send you the slides afterwards. Yeah, Hans Rosling is quite interesting. You can watch him on YouTube. He sort of explains how you can use statistics to tell stories. So I'll include the link when I send it to you to watch that. Yeah, Hounslow Insight, we're quite lucky in terms of Hounslow Council helping to fund the Hounslow Insight website. So if I go to, I'm going to show you the website. We've had a presentation from someone from Hounslow Council about the Hounslow Insight website. So I think that's recorded, so I can send that to you as well. And hopefully we'll arrange another session with them at some point as well. Basically, it's got lots of sort of government data in an easily sort of accessible format. Probably one of the most useful things is you can do a report. So you can get like a borough profile for the whole borough. So it's quite a long document. It covers things like yeah, population, housing, crime, education. Gives you the source. So it's always a good idea if you have found data to give a source. It doesn't have to be like a long bit, just maybe like just brackets ONS or brackets DWP, whatever the source is in the year. It's just so that it's giving an indication that it's come from a credible source. So yeah, we've got things like breakdown of population, people out of work, and they've converted this information is into charts already, so you can see the trends. You can also get ward profiles. So if you want to go down to smaller level, similar thing goes into a lot of detail if you want to look at a particular ward. And it also goes down to what's called lower super output areas, which is about the size of a postcode. Actually, you get different boroughs there as well. So you've got JSNA, so I think I'll talk about it a bit later on. But, yeah, LSOA, so that's an area literally about 1,500 people. So if you want to get really granular, I suppose is the term they use. You can also just do search different data sets. So you can see what Sport England has got. For example, people who participate in sport at least twice in the last 28 days. Then bring up a heat map. So the heat map is where you've got different grades showing related to different numbers. It should show you a bit more detail about the indicator as well. So it tells you here, published 2018 to 2019, updated annually, compiled by Sport England. So I think in Hounslow, you're quite lucky that you've got this this tool to use. Like I say, I can send you the copy of the recording of the session we did with someone from the London Borough of Hounslow research. So it brings together a wide range of public data. It's got the dashboard, profile reports, heat maps, the area dashboard, profile reports, London data store. So this is GLA, Greater London Authority. It's got a similar thing with area profiles. So you go to area profiles. It should then bring up a map of London. You can then click on Hounslow. It has some information here about the demographics, and you can also click on the report here. Like you can do that for any borough in London. And then, so it's quite interesting here. You've got things like population. Obviously, the census is the most accurate analysis of the population, but they do projections. So that's a projection they've done from, or an estimation from 2018. So obviously you need population, you might need a population estimate between the censuses. And it gives you things like population projection. So you can see the population of Hounslow is going to go up, projected to go up. So that means certain issues like overcrowding are going to go away. Things like comparison of population with other London boroughs, breakdown of the age groups, ethnic makeup. Now there can be issues in terms of ethnic makeup because not all groups are measured in things like the census. So sometimes people have had to do their own research. I know there's like a Somali group in Ealing, and I think because there is no category for Somali on the census or other source of information, so they had to do their own research to try and estimate what the Somali population was in West London. So yeah, sometimes literally the information you're looking for is just not recorded in the way. So you have to look at other ways of finding it. So yeah, information about employment, housing, education, deprivation. We'll come on to the another source of deprivation.
Do they have in any of the categories faith-based as well? Any kind of mention of that? Because I'm just thinking about the COVID stuff we're doing at the moment. There are certain faith groups which aren't taking part in the COVID-19 immunization program. And I was wondering whether that's included in this sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. So you'd have to sort of think. So you look, what is the exact information you're looking for? Would it be number of Sikhs, for example, or then again, it depends if how it's. What you can do is you can do you can do just, if you can't find information in, say, this area profile, then you can just go to sort of looking at the general search for data.
Okay.
It's got about, I think, 800 different data sets. So if you wanted to say something like, if you just typed in population by religion, borough, something produced by the ONS. So you can see here they've broken it down.
Yeah.
Population's down. If you go to Hounslow, it gives you some figures there in terms of the size of the population by religion. So that's a little bit out of date because that's from the, looks like that might be from the last
Yeah,
census.
2011.
But then this is updated 2 years ago. So,
Oh.
but
Right.
sometimes, like I said, sometimes the census is the only, because it's much more comprehensive than any other sort of survey. So sometimes it's the only source for a particular piece of information you've got. And like I say, that will become better once the current census is finished. That should improve the situation. But yeah, but I'd always say, yeah, check the area profiles first. If you can't find what you're looking for, then you can look at the raw data sets through this tool as well. Yeah, so London Data Store, it's yeah, over 800 open data sets. It's free to use. You can also get in touch with them if you have a query, civilsociety@london.gov.uk. CSS has got area profiles, mapping tool, GLA population projections, things like household income estimates. So those are some activities I would have done in the face-to-face class with a bit more time. Another one is the Trust for London poverty profile. So Trust for London, as well as being a funder, it also has a information called the poverty profile, where you can research data, particularly relating to things like poverty, housing. They've updated it recently, so it's slightly different to how it used to be. It used to be quite easy to look at comparisons, but it has information about, obviously, yeah, pay. They're very interested in pay, overcrowding. So it's got things like updated indicators. So look at gross weekly earnings. Yeah, so they have lots of reports. So they're updating their information. I'm trying to find the Hounslow profile. All right, so you go to boroughs, click on Hounslow. So it gives you overview. You can go onto things like living standards. So it used to be quite good because they would have indicators comparing boroughs to each other. But it does give you some indication there in terms of colour. So green is better than average. Red is worse than average. But certainly if you're applying for Trust for London, it makes sense to look at the figures they've got as your first ports of call. So obviously, if you're using figures, if you're using research the funder has funded or compiled in your own application, then they're not going to argue with their own data. And obviously, it looks quite good if you've actually looked at the information they've compiled as well. So, and obviously it shows that's the areas they're kind of interested in. So they want to fund these kind of things working in around living standards, housing, unemployment, improving people's employment if they're improving the level of people's employment to be more skilled, that kind of thing. But yeah, they have changed it a bit, so I don't think it's quite as accessible as it was, but worth having a look. So I used to have these kind of things with these like 12 out of 32, 7 out of 32 to give an idea of ranking, but they don't seem to have that anymore. Another thing in terms of deprivation is something called the Index of Multiple Deprivation. So they basically, let's see if I can bring up the map. They break down England and Wales. I think it's both by LSOA, lower super output areas. So you should be able to again, I thought the old map was easier to navigate. They seem to have changed things. But yeah, basically it's like a heat map. So you should be able to work out what area is in the highest top 10%, for example, in terms of deprivation. And obviously, if you're making an argument that the community you're supporting is in an area has lots of poverty, then this is useful to look at. Again, I find it a bit frustrating when they change these things, and then to me they become harder to use. Let's see if I can find the old map. So this is updated every few years. So I think the last one was 2019. So I think there seems to be a couple of different types of maps you can use. And this one's like a sort of heat map. So I think, yeah, the darker it is, and the higher the area, the more deprivation. So that way you can kind of see you've got Hamworth. And it can be useful if you're trying to make the case there's pockets of deprivation. it used to work, so you click on it and it would come up with the data about that area, and it doesn't seem to work anymore.
They used to have that as a part of the GIS system, but I think because there have been some changes in the past couple of years, the interface between Windows 10 and the data they have, I think something went wrong. So you've only get basic information, because I tried to do it before and didn't get very far.
But that's something I think they produced this map. Well, there seems to be a few different maps anyway. But yeah, it's a bit annoying when you have a useful tool and they amend things, they change things, and not always for the better. But again, here you can see, I think red would be areas of poverty. So again, you can see Chiswick fairly well off, but actually Brentford has actually got quite a lot of poverty in it, even though you might think, well, there's a lot of development going on. There are still areas of deprivation. Same likewise in Isleworth. So sometimes people have that issue that they think they have to make the case there is poverty in a particular area, because people might think, well, it's fairly affluent. But there you can see, you know, Teddington, Richmond is not much red. Lower rates of deprivation, I think, in Richmond than certainly parts of Hounslow. So yeah, that's a useful tool to look at if you're looking at poverty deprivation. So it's statistics on relative deprivation in small areas, published by lower super output areas. So that's 1,500 people. That kind of relates to the postcode, LSOA for each postcode. Another tool is the NOMIS. So this is Office for National Statistics website. I think the issue people found with this website is it's not quite as easy to navigate as, for example, London Data Store. But certainly worth having a look. I mean, I think probably London Data Store's probably got most of the same data sets anyway. But still worth having a look if you can't find it on there. Metropolitan Police, so they tools help local police forces doing to combat crime, different types of crime stats. So there is like I said, I think the crime statistics are updated more frequently, perhaps, than some other sources of information. Public Health England, you can get these access these area profiles. So, for example, just type in Hounslow. You can see a report. So last updated 2019. And then you've got things, some health statistics. I think sometimes some of the statistics can be quite hard to interpret, so you have to know what you're looking at. Sometimes these ones. Yeah, like you can find a report for any particular area you're looking at. Yeah, joint strategic needs assessment. So councils will produce every few years something called the joint strategic needs assessment. Basically, they have to so they can have an idea how much demand there's going to be for their services. I think I've changed it now. So change the page. And I think anything to do with sort of health, social care. You can get a summary document. Again, obviously, if you're applying to the council, for example, Council Community Fund, Thriving Communities Fund, it's quite good if you can use the data the council produced themselves. They can't really argue with it. So it's covering things like key determinants of health, aging, fertility, diversity, overcrowding. So another report to have a look at, see if you can find the information you're looking for there. Older people in deprivation. Yeah, so have people used these tools before then, or?
Yeah, I've used it, and we've used it when we've applied for grants from Children in Need. So when we were looking at the Ivy Bridge area, that we were looking at some of the things around areas of deprivation and also about needs in the area. That's how we managed to get a grant a few years ago from Children in Need. A bit like Joseph, it's for about 3 years, and that covered some of the core costs as well.
So you're able to find what you're looking for?
It's like they say, it's all out there. It's just trying to find it, and making sure you say the right words when you're doing your search. So you get used to it after a while, but I've used it in the past for other things as well. But when we've done grant, making a grant, we've used some of this as reference material as part of the application.
Yeah, I mean, you can always just even just Google was a good source of to research stuff as well.
We also use the local health watch in our borough because they have a lot of information, and obviously they're in contact with the CCG on a weekly, monthly basis. So their information is really, really up to date. And I know with reaching communities, they ask that your statistics and stuff are no more than 12 months old, ideally.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with that is a lot of the official statistics, you might not be able to get more up to date than that. So, I mean, you're limited by what you can find and how often the information is gathered, when it's published. So, yeah, I would say you might struggle sometimes to always get something that's officially produced. It'd be less than no more than a year, but all you can really do is search. But I think that's the problem. Things do become out of date. But yeah, so in terms of officially produced statistics, you got the census, labour market data, educational data. Most government departments will produce information. You can also look at things like research papers, different think tanks, for example, sometimes produce stuff. But then it's also a good idea to include some of your own research with your service users, potential service users. A lot of funders now saying they use terminology like how you're involving your service users in the sort of design and delivery of your project. So you want to kind of say how you've consulted with them, you've taken on board all their ideas. But you can also use it in terms of the need. So if you've had like a feedback from say you've been running a project already, or you've been running the service already, you can say some feedback, that use feedback, for example, that the need is growing, that it's it's not going away. You need to sort of expand your service provision to sort of meet this increasing need. But yeah, you've also got other things, other charities. So sometimes some of the big charities like Cancer Research, they sort of do their own research as well. Like I said, you can always try Google as well, just for general research. So yeah, use that combination of the qualitative and the quantitative. You've got that different tools to find those key information. It's just an issue in terms of how often they are updated. So yeah, any questions related to research? I mean, I've probably got time to go through some of the latest funding opportunities. So yeah, Joseph kindly sent me some information. So you've still got the funding to support women's organisations during the COVID-19 pandemic. Grants up to £40,000 available to charitable women's organisations working to enable women and girls to improve their mental health. Deadline for this is 25th of March. ALPKit Foundation. So ALPKit is actually like an outdoor shop, but they seem to have created a foundation as well. Grants available for organisations serving those affected by the coronavirus COVID-19 outbreak. Grants of up to £500 are available. So they've given some examples of things they will fund, like being active in local communities to help elderly or vulnerable people, minimising the impact of social isolation for those in quarantine and need access to food, medicines or social care. Again, I'll circulate the slides as well, and there's a link where you can get more information. Margaret Dobson Further Education Trust, apply by the 31st of March. So up to £5,000 for registered charities providing support to 18 to 25-year-olds with learning difficulties after they leave school. Again, there's a link on the slide for information. So yeah, Nike, in cooperation with the King Aduin Foundation, launched a new fund to provide support to organisations dedicated to creating lasting change for the Black community in London. Grants from 5,000 to 20,000 are available for non-profit organisations with plans to support projects for up to 12 months at London Borough. Find the link on the slide. Ragdoll Foundation, small grants up to 1,500, main grants up to 20,000 to support arts, cultural and youth-focused organisations working with children and young people. Thomas Wall Trust, deadline is by 30th of April. Grants of up to 5,000 are available to registered charities to assist with specific projects or core activities that support literacy, numeracy, digital and additional skills for people aged 11 years or older. Pixel Fund, grants are between £500 and £5,000 to support projects that promote the mental health and well-being of children and young adults. Cameron Grants Trust, funding £100 to 2,500 is available for projects showing innovation in mental health. Apply anytime. Yeah, there's a Ealing related one, Acton Gardens Community Chest, so anybody, any Ealing groups. Another Ealing one. Cornerstone Fund, closing date for applications 22nd of March. So they want partnership approaches aiming to bring about systemic change to tackle structural inequalities and build stronger, more resilient communities. Again, there's a link on the slide. National Lottery Heritage Fund reopens. I think some people think Heritage Fund is only for old buildings, but I think you can apply for things like storytelling as well. So it's slightly wider than just old buildings. A new £10 million fund to attract private sector investment in environmental projects. Deadline 26th of March. Funding for organisations supporting Black and minority women affected by violence. Grants of between £30,000 and £250,000 available to frontline organisations. Closing date, actually, yeah, tomorrow, Friday, 5th March, so it's quite close. Funding for projects that assist disadvantaged young people. Grants of between £200 and £2,000 are available for projects which empower disadvantaged young people aged 11 to 25.
That one's a really, I think it's still open. That one's a really easy one. What they ask you to do is you send them a short video that you do on your phone, just telling them about the project, and it's 2 sheets of A4 paper. That's it.
Yeah, it does actually say 28th of April. There's 20th of February. Sorry, so I'm just checking if it's.
It's reopened again.
All right.
Oh.
Well, it says it's closed there.
Okay. Well, keep an eye on it because it opens periodically.
Yeah. But at the moment, yeah, at the moment that one's closed. But again, I'll let you know if it reopens. Yeah, MSc charity, money saving expert charity. Currently focused on young people, inviting organisations to apply with projects supporting young people under 25 with money management. Leather Sellers Company, registered charities, currently supporting vulnerable people in areas of high deprivation, welcome to apply. You must have an income of less than 200,000. National Lottery Community Fund Climate Action Fund. Round 2 is focused on supporting community-driven projects that address consumption in the UK, covering themes such as food waste, repair and reuse, retail and consumerism, and waste streams. Deadline 8th of April. Ministry of Justice funding domestic abuse and sexual violence. Applications by 12 noon on Monday, 8th March. Compassionate communities. So new initiative funded by Imperial Health Charity. So they're looking at things like food poverty and obesity, mental health and wellbeing, digital poverty exclusion, language barriers and misinformation. And you can apply for micro grants up to £20,000, small grants 1,000, between 1,000 and 10,000, and large grants between £10,001 and £30,000. So that one's closed. Near Neighbours, grants of up to £4,000 are available to local projects that support communities affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Includes West London, and they're suggesting you get in touch with their Near Neighbours coordinator. So that one's gone. Aurelius Charitable Trust. Grants available for charitable organisations involved with conservation of culture inherited from the past. Trust for London, so the next deadline is not until 1st June. Connected Communities is the main one for small groups with an income below 100,000. So that's probably going to be the main strand, but like I said before, make sure you're applying to the right program. So worth getting in touch with them. So they'll fund, things strengthening voice of people directly experiencing poverty and inequality. Also things like advice work, community activities led by communities in outer London boroughs. So they are focusing now on outer London. I think traditionally there was the idea that most areas of poverty were in inner London, but they're recognising demographic changes, especially related to things like housing issues, causing a lot of poverty in outer London boroughs as well, because it's their rapid changing population and increased levels of poverty. Like I said, I'll send you the slides from the session, the workshop we did with Trust for London, and the recording of the session. Windrush Day grant scheme. So you can apply for between £2,500 and £25,000 for projects or events which tell the story of the Windrush generation and or celebrates their contribution to Britain. This is to reflect the celebration of Windrush Day on the 22nd of June. Deadline is 10th of March. Volant Trust, COVID-19 response funds. Deadline is 31st of July. You can get funding for running costs as well as support costs. Grants up to £5,000 for projects aimed to help homeless people return to the community. Closing date for applications is thanks for attending. Is 15th of March. Comic relief capacity building grants program. I think, Joseph, you said you were successful in this.
Yeah.
Applications can be made at any time.
So you can apply. So what we applied for this to update. We did update our website, update our policies, and then £500 towards a consultant to help us with writing a funding bid.
Okay.
And again, that was really, really quick. Once we put the application in, it took about maybe 3 weeks for them to say we were successful. You just have to be careful that it doesn't work with Google Chrome. So you have to use Internet Explorer, otherwise it doesn't let you log on.
All right. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear that you can apply for funding to be able to pay a fundraiser to get more funding.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose that comes under capacity building, really. So yeah, that's.
Well, to be fair, I didn't use the word fundraiser in the application. I put consultant.
All right.
I was creative.
Posh way of saying it.
I was just creative.
But yeah, that's one thing. I suppose that's one thing with being funding applications is the element of being creative with language, which is yeah, does help. But yeah, to be eligible, applicants must have an annual income of less than 250,000. Sport England. I need to check if these are still open, but funding to activate enhanced community spaces. This is the crowdfunding one. They also have a normal grant application for clubs for work supporting sport and physical activities. Community partnership program to tackle food poverty and support the elderly. They're recommending you visit the one-stop store for more information. Funding for projects to increase literacy, numeracy, and digital skills. Grants of up to £5,000 are available to registered charities to assist with specific projects. Deadline is 30th of April. Alec Dixon Trust. Applications invited from individuals aged 30 and under. Headley Foundation. Principal aim of the grant making is to affect change for the better in the lives of young people. Deadline is 28th of April. Obviously, National Lottery is still COVID focused. Loan list funding from community groups. Second round of funding will be launched in the summer. Obviously, Isleworth and Hounslow charity still there. Grants are rewarded for relief in need and relief of sickness. Idlewild Trust. Independent grant making trust supporting conservation and the arts. AB Charitable Trust. Applications welcome from charities working to support migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. Criminal justice, penal reform, human rights, particular access to justice. Deadline is 25th of April. LGBT plus futures grant program. New £350,000 funding scheme launched to address additional needs of LGBT plus people and communities. Grants short-term work must be used by 31st of May. Freshwater Foundation, so they only fund Ealing and Hounslow. Small grants, again, so link to the website. YAP Charitable Trust, so work with elderly people, children, young people aged 5 to 25. No deadline at the moment, I think, but decisions can take 5 months. Field Family Charitable Trust, grants to registered charities in London for work with young people 13 to 25 and the elderly. Inspire Hounslow, so they will fund above £1,000. It's for projects working with disadvantaged young people. But below £1,000, it's for any project. And because they only fund Hounslow projects, so you haven't got as much competition. So always worth applying if you're Hounslow specific. Catalyst Housing Emergency Fund. You can apply for up to £2,000. Jack Petchey Foundation. Wide variety of projects and programs for young people aged 10 to 21. Woodward Charitable Trust. That actually fund core costs, which will achieve a positive impact in some. These fund the following areas. So these talk about arts outreach, children, young people, disability projects, disadvantaged women, disadvantaged families, prisoners, ex-offenders. And they will fund registered charities, CIO, CICs, grants usually under £3,000. Next deadline is to be confirmed. Yeah, so thanks for people who've been. I think it's just oh, that's gone. Henry Smith Charity. I'll circulate the slides. Yeah, and if you've got any questions, you need to just get in touch with me. Like I said, I have another session next week as well.
I mean, the other thing I was going to say, Ian, because it doesn't obviously affect our group because we're not in the borough. But the other thing that I do think that maybe some of the people who attend these sessions should think about is actually putting in a joint application to the community fund. Because given that some people are charities, some people are not, some people have got experience or some people haven't, if they could actually come together and actually put in a joint bid, then if successful, everyone will actually get a share of the actual money. And that may be better than everybody trying to put in an application which may not be successful. Is that something that ELIN facilitates for the groups?
Yeah, I mean, we've done partnerships. We've done partnership applications as the lead partner. I think in general, there's been a desire for more partnership working. For whatever reason, I think maybe whether it's just because it depends on the relationships between people in different groups. Yeah, it's something we need to try and encourage more of. I think sometimes there's disagreements about, well, why is that group getting more money than I'm getting? You know, because when you have a partnership, you don't always say everybody gets the same amount of money.
Yeah.
I think sometimes this causes like resentment because there's a kind of like, well, why should they get more money than me? But that's something you have to work out when you work out how's the work going to be allocated.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Have you found it easy then to be involved in partnerships, or?
We haven't. I've just chosen not to be involved in a partnership because I mean, primarily we can do the stuff ourselves. But I see lots of smaller groups that may have, I don't know, a 10 or 15,000 pound turnover. They just don't have the time or the expertise to sit down and write the applications. So you can actually take them absolutely months and months and months. Whereas if the groups were to come together and they were to say, this is what we would like out of the actual bid, and everybody can actually say how much they would actually like for doing it. And then, you know, some lead then takes responsibility for the management and take a management fee. Then everybody, maybe 5 people may get 20,000 each a year over 3 years. Whereas for the smaller groups, I think where there's a problem is that if you don't have reserves, you're a risk. If your organization's only got £10,000, no one's going to give you a grant for 50 or 60,000 because you're a significant risk. So a partnership would be a good way of actually making sure that people get something rather than nothing.
Yeah, I mean, we did like a lottery application to a climate action fund as a partnership application. I think that was about the end of 2019.
Right.
Unfortunately, that was unsuccessful, but in that situation, we were applying as the lead partner.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, where it's available, we have done that as a lead partner, but obviously we can't do it all the time. I think what happens is that smaller groups just end up going for awards for all funding.
Yeah.
Because I just think, yeah, I suppose I should maybe try and be interested to hear from other boroughs how they've created. I know, like in Hackney, they've kind of created a whole CIC vehicle to basically be a sort of almost like permanent consortium to be able to apply. Something we need to.
I mean, that's one way. The other thing that I saw, I think it happened down in Devon, is that basically the organization approached this organization, and they all, I don't know if the fundraiser was charging £2,000, between 10 organizations, they all paid 200 towards it. But basically it meant that they had a successful bid, they had a bid that went in, and then there was elements of the application. What the person did was she actually worked with them at the actual kind of same time, so they got a better understanding of what writing a bid is about. Because with the best will in the world, if you want to grow your organization, I think what happens is people get the wrong impression about funding. Awards for All isn't an indication of fundraising, in my view, really, because it's very, very, very straightforward. It's very prescriptive. And as soon as you start going to people like Trust for London or to Henry Smith or whatever, it's just a different skill set. And with reaching communities, again, completely different skill set. So I think maybe people like, you know, Omar and Shanjit, maybe they should actually have a discussion amongst themselves to look at an area that maybe they have a joint interest in, whether it's young people, whether it's health, whatever it is. And then if you can find some more like-minded people come together, because I think if funders are more keen these days, especially since the London community response, funders have identified that BME groups are at a disadvantage when it comes to actually putting